In the active shooter incident management process, we talk about the importance of rescue task forces. And that's great. But what actually is the job of Rescue Task Force 1? What are the duties of the first rescue task force through the door? And are they different? Coming up today, stick around. Welcome to the Active Shooter Incident Management Podcast. My name is Bill Godfrey, your podcast host. I am joined today by Ron Otterbacher from our law enforcement side. Ron, good to have you.
Glad to be here.
Been seeing more of you lately. I'm glad the time is working out good. Across the table from us, Kami Maertz from our law enforcement side. Kami, good to have you with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And my dear friend, Tom Billington, back in the house. Tommy, how are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
All right. So Tom and I from the fire and EMS side. So today's topic, we're going to talk about the duties of Rescue Task Force 1. And in reality, there are some things that are very different about responsibilities and roles for RTF 1 that don't necessarily fall on the other RTFs. And so I'd like to break this into two pieces. I think to start with, let's start with the perfect scenario where the contact teams have organized a casualty collection point. They've got it secured and the RTF is going to come through the door and what they need to do. And then before we wrap up, I want to come back and talk about how does that RTF manage when they come into the site and there isn't a casualty collection point. There may not be a particularly good security posture, what that looks like and what needs to happen. So let's start with the security side of this. Kami, if you would lead us off here. When you're escorting that first rescue task force into the casualty collection point that's been called out to you, so you know a location that you're going to, you're on the radio with tactical and with the other contact teams, what are the things that you and Ron would be looking for and concerned about as you're moving the RTF to the casualty collection point? And what's that process for entering the room?
The main things obviously we're going to look for is any threats. So that's going to be our main job, is that we're just escorting our fire rescue personnel to the scene safely. That is our entire job, is to be looking and listening for any threats that might break off, that may call us to retract back to an area location or find a safe location. So we're also at the same time going to be looking for areas that we might have to duck into or get them to a point of safety with good cover and stuff like that in case the scene does go active. Once we make entry, the first things I'm going to be looking for is to make sure that we do have a security element in that room, and that has been established. So those are things that we're looking for as a rescue task force. Is my job is just to protect the fire rescue personnel. So I'm looking for safety risk. And if that does come up, how am I going to protect my people with me?
Ron, what about you? What's important in your mind, maybe even before you leave staging with your RTF? What are the things that are important in your mind that Kami didn't already mention that you want to talk about?
And I think she did a great job, but it starts back at the staging area where we set the parameters. This is how we're going to operate. If we tell you to do this, this is what you're going to do because it's for your safety. This is we're not going to tell them what equipment to bring, but we're going to say, look, we're going to travel kind of light. We're not going to bring 7 stretchers and everything else. We got to be able to move. And, this is where we're heading. They're saying that we should be safe, have safe access into that area. However, things could change. Dynamics may change. And if they change and we tell you to do something, you got to do it immediately. And our job is strictly, like she said, our job is protective detail for the RTF. And no matter what, we're not going to leave our protective responsibility. And we've got to, if they're not confident we're going to protect them, they're not going to be in the game.
I think that communication aspect is very important to let them know too. If you see something, tell us, right? If we miss something, that you know each other and you're talking to each other and saying like, hey, I'm Kami, you're Bill. Hey, if you see something, Bill, let me know, so that you're already building that relationship and letting them know that you're open to receiving that too.
Perfect. So, Tom, it's you and me on the RTF with Kami and Ron. They safely get us into the casualty collection point. We walk through the threshold. They tell us we're good to go to work. What's on your mind, the first couple of things right off the bat?
Well, first thing on my mind is hopefully I already know ahead of time how many casualties I have or how many survivors I have, what priority they are as far as law enforcement. Are they red or are they green? So I know I might having more resources coming or more RTFs coming. I need to know that. And when I walk in the room, my first job obviously is to take charge of that room and make sure that I know where the casualties are. I start my triage process so I can start the whole treatment part.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's very, very similar. I think one of the first things I want to do is, assuming there's a contact team that was already in the room, and we would hope have already done the geographic sort. And just for those that haven't heard us talk about that on earlier podcasts, so one of the things that we hope that contact teams can do if they have the time and the resources is to sort the room. Uninjured go up against this wall. The injured that are walking go up against this wall, which then leaves the injured that cannot walk laying in the middle of the floor. Your walking wounded are your greens. Everybody in the middle of the floor is a red, and your uninjured are over here out of the way. And so as we come into the room, I'm going to want to try to establish contact with one of those contact team members that's already been in the room and say, okay, hey, what do you got? What do you know? I mean, if they've geographic sorted the room, it is a lot easier, as you said. We've already got some ideas of the numbers and we can look. But if they haven't, what do they already know? And the answer may be, well, we've got one that's been shot in the head and we've got two that are shot in the chest. That's all great information. Then after that, Tom, I mean, I'm thinking, because our job, we're working for triage, and we have got to figure out, we've got to re-triage everybody. We've got to reassess everybody and then get that information back to the triage group supervisor. What does that look like for you when it's just the two of us to start with?
Well, first of all, anything we can do quickly to save a life, we need to do. If we have, an arterial bleed or something. But the main thing is getting the other RTFs in to help us. So we're organizing the room. We're making sure triage knows the numbers we have. And then we start organizing how we're going to care for who first, who second, et cetera. But we cannot do much with just one RTF. We're going to be very busy sorting things out. So we need more RTFs in there to help us as soon as possible.
Yeah. And I think it's in that report to the triage group supervisor about what we've got. I think it's good to give the initial report. So if we do have the luxury of coming into a room that's already been geographically sorted, to say we've got, 3 greens and 4 reds in this location, we'll follow up with you a minute, when we re-triage, and then 4 or 5 minutes later. And this is where that inevitable counting in colors always goes horribly wrong, is because now you and I have had a chance to go through and quickly assess everybody. And we've got, 2 black tags, 1 red, 1 yellow and 2 greens left, or whatever the numbers are. Because as Jill says, never do math in public. And I think my numbers just didn't add up right there. Right. But it kind of illustrates the point when we now call back to triage and say, here's our updated numbers. How many times have you guys seen that go wrong in training? And I know both of you have worked the tactical position where you're working with tactical triage and transport, and the numbers come up and they don't match the numbers from the radio report 5 minutes ago. What does that look like? What does that cause? How often do you see that be a problem?
I think the biggest thing that it causes is they add them together. Is instead of clarifying that is what you have, is that they add in the previous numbers they have with this numbers, and it causes a lot of confusion. Instead of going with our rescue task forces know what they're doing and they're in control of this, these are the numbers that we're going to use. So any previous were estimations, and we allow those to be estimations, and this is what numbers we're at.
Ron, how about you? How do you see them get wrapped around the axle on that?
It tends to be, there's some confusion at tactical triage transport, but it's even worse once you get to command board and they're trying to account for everything else that's going on. And a lot of times, if they would just reach back to triage and transport, they could get more accurate numbers, but they don't. So they continue to run with the numbers they have. And it just adds to the confusion that's going on there. It's a simple fix if you just stop for a second. Okay, let's reassess. How many people do you have at casualty collection point? If you do that, then it takes care of it. But so few times will they stop it and say, hold on just a second, let's get this straight. And that would help in all the resource management and everything else from that.
But being wrapped around the axles is a good point right there. We cannot get so hung up on colors and tags that we're not saving lives.
Right.
Those numbers are going to change. The colors are going to change. Unfortunately, some good, some bad. So we have to make sure we're doing our primary job, first of all, is saving lives and making sure we have other resources coming in to assist us as soon as possible.
Perfect segue, Tom. So one of the things that you said a minute ago is I need to talk to triage, and I need more RTFs down in here. What, in your mind, are there any good guidelines for the number of RTFs or the number of people that you need based on your patient counts and severities. I mean, I think I'm trying to go back. I think I said 3 or 4 greens or 3 or 4 reds or something like that. Let's just call it a mixed bag. You've got 3 or 4 walking wounded, 3 or 4 reds. What are the thoughts on your mind about the numbers of medical people you need to do that initial stabilizing, life-saving treatment for those numbers?
Well, best case scenario, I want 1 RTF for 1 red patient, if possible. Again, it depends on your resources. Maybe 1 or 2 for every yellow. Maybe 1 for every 2 yellows, something like that. But the more, the better. Remember, half the RTF force is law enforcement. Their job is not to pitch in, it's to protect you. And so you have medical hands-on. So we want to get as many in there as soon as possible that know what they're doing as quickly as possible.
And I think that's a really interesting point. It does a little bit come down to the local agency and if they have any policies or if the teams get adjusted sizes. One of the things that we often advocate and talk about is not to set a team size based on policy, but the first RTF to the door should be traveling. Ron, you mentioned this. We should be traveling light. We want to go fast and light on the first RTF, which presumably would be 2 law enforcement and 2 fire EMS. But that doesn't mean that if the situation is calming down, shall we say, that the next RTF, that RTF2 coming through the door couldn't have 2 law enforcement and 5 fire EMS personnel.
Very true.
How receptive would you guys be as our escorts if Tom and I say, hey, listen, the next RTF, can I have them beef that up to more people? Or you think we're okay to increasing that team size? What are the concerns from a security perspective of bringing in a larger team size without necessarily upscaling the number of law enforcement on it?
I think it's obviously going to depend on the area that you're in, right? How easy is it to attract them? How easy is it the protection, find cover? All of those kind of things are going to be a big thing. And how big of a warm pocket have we built to how many we're willing to get down there? Because if you get too many, you don't want to overload it. Now, it's safer if you can get them to the casualty collection point, even the location of your casualty collection point, how easy it is to get out and into that location is going to be a big depending factor. Obviously, the more resources we can get down there, the better within that casualty collection point. So that's going to be one of those kind of weighing factors.
Now, you used the phrase warm pocket. Can you explain that a little bit?
So that's what we're doing, is creating a warm pocket to be able to get our rescue task forces. So the area is a hot zone. We're going through and establishing an area, getting containment and security element within a location that's creating almost a warm pocket. So it's not necessarily a warm zone, or it's definitely not a cold zone. It's just a warm pocket that we have security elements set up so we can get our rescue task forces downrange.
So the warm pocket may be larger than just the CCP that we happen to be in. You may have a hallway and adjacent rooms. Is that kind of what you mean?
Absolutely. And so if we've created that large enough warm pocket that we're like, this whole area is warm, we can consider this warm, that's going to make our ingress and egress of fire rescue personnel much easier for us and a much safer environment for everybody.
So Ron, here's a specific question for you. So unlike the rest of us who lived in one discipline or the other, you actually did both. You started out your career as a paramedic working in fire EMS and then jumped over to the law enforcement side. From that experience base of what you're doing, if the 4 of us are in the CCP and Tom and I are having a conversation about needing more medical peeps coming into the room, what are the things that make sense to you to weigh that out in terms of balancing the security risk versus the need for the medical care?
Well, by nature, you've got the warm pocket set up. So you've got a security component there, plus you got the security component for the RTF initially. Then you've got another RTF. If you look at resource management, do I need, say we go with this, what we use 2 officers and 2 EMS folks, and we have 5 of the RTFs downrange. Do I need that many security components, or can I use them to our advantage somewhere else? I can transport these people downrange and keep them safe. We've got a way to get to the casualty collection point. We got a component there. Do I need all the extra security folks for that at that time? And that's something you got to weigh out. And that's actually something I was thinking about while we're sitting here, is we tend to push the 4-person component. And sometimes if I know I've got 15 people injured downrange, I might rather take 8 fire EMS folks in the second RTF with still a security component, but it may not be as large, but get them downrange so they can work on patients. Again, we're holding that. We're providing security for it, which is what we're doing. But I may need the extra security component to firm up our ambulance exchange point. But if I got everyone downrange and they can't leave their responsibility, then am I robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Makes sense. So perfect segue there. So Tom, one of the things that we've learned through the training repetitions and real life experience is you get into the CCP, you do your triage, you call back the numbers, you start laying hands on to do your medical care, stabilizing, and then we're ready to transport, and whoops, we forgot to get the ambulance exchange point stood up. So one of the things that we tell RTF1 is do yourself a favor. So we've come into the room, we've triaged, we've reported our initial numbers, right. We've taken care of any right now medical issues, and we're getting ready to go to work. And before we do that, but first, we turn to our law enforcement detail and go, okay, there's an exit door right over there. Can we get ambulances back there? Can we use that as an ambulance exchange point? And we ask the two of you to start figuring that out, working on that with tactical, while you and I turn our attention to medical care. How big a deal is that?
That is a big deal. Actually, as you know, we track all of our times during these scenarios when we train, and that is the biggest time consumer, one of them anyway, where, hey, we're treating people, wait a minute, there's no ambulances here yet. That has to happen soon. So that first RTF, that's one of the responsibilities. When they come in, they should say, all right, Cammy or Ron, hey, I saw this exit over here. Can you all work with tactical, get security out there for us? That way there's no delay, because again, that's where we can cut time on that clock.
And the other thing I look at in those scenarios is so often having, I'm at the command post quite a bit, I'm tactical quite a bit, and you've got everyone in those positions trying to determine where the ambulance exchange point is. And huge. The only people, and I talk about it, whether you're a contact team, whether you're RTF, everyone else is guessing. The only people that know what the heck's going on are the people downrange. I say paint a picture. Right. So the ones that should be saying where the ambulance exchange point should be the RTF or the contact teams or, however that communication comes from downrange back, as opposed to, okay, I'm sitting here at the command post. This looks like a good place over here. Not understanding that you're going to have to carry these people 350 yards to get to an ambulance.
And there's an escalator in the other corner and a freight elevator.
It needs to come to y'all, and y'all need to make that determination. Right. And they need to be smart enough to understand that they can't make that determination from their location. Right.
And I think with that too, is it's important when you're talking about that for contact teams, say if they said, I think this is a good place for an ambulance exchange point, and the RTF turns around and says, no, don't be offended. Right. Know that that's what they do. They drive ambulances, right? We drive cars and trucks and stuff. They drive ambulances. They know the capabilities. They know the easiest routes. So if they tell you it's going to be better location, say, okay, you got it. We can make it there and make it there. Unless there's a tactical reason that you can't. But that's when you have that discussion of, say, which one's better. But listen to other people and have that communication.
And then it becomes a responsibility of transport.
Yes.
Along with tactical and triage to figure out, okay, this is where they want. How do I get them in there?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And do I have security for it?
And the two biggest issues that people underestimate about ambulances, number one, they cannot go off-road. And when I off-road, I don't mean in loose dirt. I mean, you can't drive them in grass. They will get stuck. They just absolutely will get stuck. And they're trucks. They do not turn with a tight radius at all. And backing them, especially when you're in a crowded environment with a lot of people moving around, is a risky operation. So having to pull in and then, back to a 3-point turn to get out is going to be time consuming and risky, as opposed to coming up with some sort of arrangement where you can pull in and pull right out. So Tom, we're in the casualty collection point. We've done our report up. Cammy and Ron are working on our ambulance exchange point. You and I have more patients than we can deal with. So we've talked about having our next RTF. So we would call back to triage and say, we need 2 more RTFs, and I need like 5 people per RTF. I need those to be larger teams. What are your thoughts about also saying, if we need specific equipment that we didn't bring. If we do have to move them, is it in your mind, is there a time that it's okay for RTFs to bring backboards or maybe even bring some stretchers in?
Heck yeah. And so like what you mentioned, I hope it happens sooner. Hopefully that second RTF at least is on the way before I have to call for them. But once we are there, again, RTF 1, what is your job? Sort the room, do triage. Now, wait a minute. I need some specialty equipment to get these people moved. I have somebody that's obese. I have no way to move this person over here. I have the special needs situation here. That's all RTF 1 because as the second and third RTFs come in, their job is going to be primarily doing that medical care. And you're kind of running the incident, the internal incident itself as the RTF 1.
So for illustration purposes, we've got the second RTF is showing up at the door and you're in charge of the casualty collection point. What are the things that you're going to want to tell RTF2 to do? What do you want from RTF2? What should be their expectations and what are the instructions you're going to give them?
I'm going to give them their patients as by the highest priority, what I want them to do. I'm going to give them information as to what we have. Information is important. I'm also going to tell them, here's what I'm doing with the ambulance exchange point. Go to work. Next RTF coming in, I'm going to take that load off of them also. But I want to keep them working. I'll take the load of running the room and running the situation. Let them do their job, treating that patient. That's the main thing.
So we're working the treatment. It's going underway. Sooner or later, we're going to be ready for ambulances. We get them up to the ambulance exchange point. Depending on the proximity, there may be a task in moving people to the ambulances. What are the thoughts about the security posture for doing that movement and having maybe it's RTF 4 that comes through the door? You guys are responsible for getting the patients loaded. This one and this one are ready to go. But what does that look like from a security posture? Let's assume we don't have the luxury of opening the door and the ambulance back doors are right there. We're going to have to move them, at least 50 feet, 100 feet, somewhat exposed in a parking area. What are the things that are going through your minds if you're the security detail for that RTF that's having to move patients?
We may have to protect the corridor. Again, the AEP should have its own security component. So the only thing we should be responsible for is getting them safely from here to the AEP. And it may mean that we take, we're not taking the entire security component and they're not leaving the RTFs. They're just branching out just a little bit to make sure we've got security as they move from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing is utilizing your resources is having somebody who's going to take a leadership role down there that's looking around and saying we have, say, 4 RTFs, so we have 4 officer component on that RTF. We have casualty collection point. We have security element in there. We have the ambulance exchange point. We have a security element on that. So to switch around and move around those resources and say we're going to create that corridor of safety from here to there so that we're using those resources more effectively to be able to get those patients in and out quickly.
Whatever is the most expeditious way to get the job done.
That's what matters.
Without compromising security.
Safety. Yep.
So, Tom, this is all unfolding. We have several RTFs in there with us. Ambulance exchange point is set. We've got a team that's beginning to move people. What are the things that we have left to communicate to triage, if anything? What do we need to talk about?
This is where triage definitely needs to have some colors now and numbers because the colors have changed, the severity have changed. They need some more accurate numbers because they're sitting right next to the transportation officer. And that's where the transportation officer has started doing their job. What hospitals do I have available? What priorities can the hospital take? So getting that correct information updated to triage from the RTF one is very important.
And I would also say, I think that it's important to watch your wording in that radio call to the triage group supervisors to say, this is what I have left.
Good point.
So that there's not that issue that you said where they're doubling up, they're adding, well, wait a minute, you only had 1 yellow. Now you're telling me you have 3 yellows. Well, that's because a couple of my greens decompensated.
Exactly,
and so to be very clear when you're calling. And by the way, the flip side of that, I think is fair game too. If you're the triage group supervisor and you're not getting an update from your RTF, to call them and say, what do you have left?
Exactly.
What is there left with you? Do you, Tom, how often do you think that that's a critical element that introduces confusion and chaos?
It happens a lot. And again, I said early on that the colors may change. Don't get wrapped up in them. But towards that point, we need accurate numbers. We need accurate colors because that can really put a cog in the wheel as to who goes to what hospital. Does somebody get the correct care or not? So it gets very important towards the loading point.
And then we just keep working the process until we've got the CCP emptied.
Right.
At which point we obviously need to call back, let triage know that we have no viable patients left at that location, find out if there's another task, another assignment. Is there, from a security perspective, as we empty that CCP, are there still issues for law enforcement remaining in that CCP where we just treated all these people that were shot?
Well, you're likely going to have, you likely might have your black tags, right? So you might have your deceased. And so that becomes its own security element that you're going to be married to for the remainder of that, for the investigation side of it. You're also going to have some uninjured. And so where are they going to go? Who's going to stay with them? You've now created this area with them in there. So all of that stuff would have to be considered.
And if you return your RTFs back to the staging area, they don't go back just on their own. They go back with the security component they came with. So you may have to adjust, and you may determine, tactical triage and transport may determine, wait, I'm going to keep 2 RTFs down range. We're relatively safe right where we're at. We got protection. We got security in place in case something kicks off beyond there, because now I don't have to go back and make up all the distance I already covered. So those are all tactical decisions you have to make. But again, none of those decisions should be made at the RTF level. It should be made triage transport after they've talked to command, because command may have other ideas they want to use with those. And that's where bringing everyone together and talking to each other is, critical in those situations.
And let's remember, and you brought it up right there, an RTF is a medical mission. If the medical mission is over, we may want an RTF to stay there. But if command needs law enforcement officers for something else, they need to get those rescue folks back to staging in a safe
with their
environment.
security component.
Exactly.
Which is an interesting point that you just mentioned on. And Kami, I was thinking of this when you mentioned it. If we've got 4 RTFs, we've got 4 sets of RTF security, which might be a bit excessive for a casualty collection point. In fact, it might be too many people in a confined space. Tom, and I don't know if you remember this, but years ago when we were doing some of that full-scale training where we were actually doing ambulance exchange points and doing the ambulance loading, things like that, we had some training classes where we were short on cops. We didn't have enough cops to outfit 4 our RTFs. And one of the things that we worked around it is we got 1 RTF inside. So you got the contact team that's securing the casualty collection point. You got 1 RTF of security in there with a small team. And then when the first ambulance came up, we used it kind of as a Trojan horse. We put 5, 6, 7, 8 medical people inside the back of the ambulance so that when the ambulance came up into the secured ambulance exchange point and we brought out that first patient, we were able to hand them the patient and then beef up our team. How do you feel about that from a security perspective, to know that your RTF suddenly just went from 2 to 8? Does that cause any challenges for you?
I think as long as it's part of the immediate action plan, right? Everyone knows that's what's going to happen, and everyone's assigned to the plan and knows what their role is. The only thing you don't want to happen is everybody to run away from the RTFs and leave a bunch of rescue personnel without any protection. So as long as somebody knows that you're bringing them down there, this is their role. Your job is to get them from here to here safely, and then these people are taking over their security. So these are going to be established as a security over the RTFs, and everybody's aware of the plan and everybody's okay with the plan. I think that's the biggest thing.
I like that.
And you weigh out your security problems that you're dealing with at the time. You're
like
relatively
how much risk?
sure. Yeah, it's a risk reward type thing. And if I feel relatively safe, I can get them down there. And again, relatively safe is not 100%, but if I feel I can get them down there safe and get them into their mission, I'm good with that. But I've got to have that confidence that not only do I have security on the AEP, but also moving them from the AEP to the casualty collection point. If I'm not confident I've got that security, I may throw in an extra officer or 2 into that Trojan horse and say, okay, I think with this, we got people with them while they're moving. We got people at the ambulance exchange point. We got people at the casualty collection point. We feel we've got it covered well. So those are determinations we make.
I like that. Tom, anything that we missed that we didn't cover in the process for RTF1 specifically, those extra duties, which why don't you highlight the key differences for the first RTF?
Well, the key difference is obviously in fire rescue and EMS, we're very emphatic about first unit on scene takes command. So you're not taking command, but you're in charge. So remember, have that one person in charge to take account of your casualties. What severity are there? How many are there? And get your resources in there, organize your resources, get them treated accordingly, get them into the ambulances accordingly. And your first RTF should be the first one in, probably the last one out, kind of running the whole scene.
And make sure that you coordinate with your security detail, that ambulance exchange point. I think that's, I think you nailed everything there. Last thoughts for the two of you, that first RTF, you're the security taking the first group of unarmed people in. As you said, it's relatively secure. What does that mean? Well, it's all relative. What are the big things that are on your mind that other officers who might have that duty should be thinking about?
I think the biggest thing is that it is a medical component with our medical job with a security detail associated with it. So you're allowing them to control what their needs are. All you're doing is keeping them safe. They're controlling what needs. They're going to tell you, this is what I need to save people's lives, and you're controlling the safety. And so you let them take the lead on that. As long as it's not a safety risk, you're letting them take the lead on the needs.
I think the other thing is projecting. You know that you're going to send RTFs downrange, so you got to have a law enforcement component with the RTFs. You know eventually you're going to have an ambulance exchange point. So if you're law enforcement leadership, you've got to plan on that. You know, it doesn't do any good for Tommy as RTF1 to call back and say, hey, I'm ready for the ambulance exchange points. Now you're saying, oh, I got to get some cops. I should already had them. If they weren't deployed, they better be right on the starting line. As soon as I say go, they better be there within 30 seconds. And so those are all things we can do ahead of time. Just like when I'm in command and medical branch shows up first, I always tell them, go ahead and, you know, you're going to need RTFs. Go ahead and start standing them up at staging and have them stay there until you give words to deploy them. If we don't, then all of a sudden, hey, we need RTFs. Well, you heard 20 minutes ago we need RTFs. Got people shot everywhere. So start planning those things ahead of time. Get them ready to deploy. We're not saying let's stage and deploy them. We're saying have them ready so when we give the whistle, they're gone.
I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you all for talking about this topic. This was an important one. It was several weeks ago, we were talking about some of the specific duties of the contact teams that go in. And so I thought that this was a great follow-on for that on the medical side for the things that are a little bit different for the First Rescue Task Force. Everybody, thank you for joining us and listening. If you have not liked and subscribed the podcast, please do so and share it with those that you work with. This doesn't do any good if we don't get everybody on the same page. Thank you to our producer, Carla Torres, for making us look and sound good. And until next time, stay safe.